So the GoPro Hero 9 isn't quite revolutionary. Like, it does seem like any other action camera, but the reason why I actually bought this was pretty much the Hypersmooth feature, and oh boy, it is incredibly smooth. What's going on, my friends? It's Jason here, all the way down under. Thank you for tuning in wherever you may be in the world. Today we feast our eyes on the GoPro Hero 9 and its crazy smooth Hypersmooth function, and I just want to show you my settings and how I actually used it in this video that was in the intro to match with the A7S III. And personally, I think it actually looked pretty amazing, but there are a few settings that you may actually want to consider before shooting. But just before we get into it, just a quick mention to commenters Alice, Miguel, Alexander, Tim, and Steve, commenting and continuing support on this channel. Now, I also still have my competition running where you can win the iSteady Pro 3 and a few other prizes in this competition. It'll end in 31st of October 2020. So all you need to do is be subscribed to my channel for your chance to win, and the winner will be picked at random. Okay, so the two awesome features in the new GoPro Hero 9 that I really enjoy and it is extremely useful is Hypersmooth 3.0 and Horizon Leveling. Now, Max Lens Mod is actually one, but I don't actually have that mod at the moment. Hopefully I'll get my hands on one just so I can actually test it out. But anyway, let's get into this. Now, for those who actually don't know Aussie muscle cars, the HSV R8 essentially is like your GM or General Motors or Chev. It's got a Chev engine in it, I think. It's an LS3 6.3 liter V8 engine. It has a ton of work done to it internally. And, you know, I just like to do a sweet little video to show it off. But anyway, let's get into the settings that I actually had to do with this outside shot with the GoPro. Now, I did shoot in 4K 25 frames per second, and I made sure I actually had that smooth motion blur. So to get that, I needed the shutter to be at 180 degrees, which was 1/50th of a second. And to achieve this, I actually had to use this. Now, this is the ND filter here by Freewell. This is the one thing that you need to get that smooth motion blur, unless you've just got that perfect amount of light going into the sensor. But you know, if the shutter was actually left a little bit too high, the footage would just look too sharp and there wouldn't be as much motion blur. Especially it is noticeable with the ground, when the ground sort of moving underneath you, or even in the background when it comes to like the grass and stuff. You want to see a little bit of motion blur because that's what our eyes are actually accustomed to seeing naturally. I also had the minimum ISO set to 100 and a maximum set to 100. I had the sharpness. Now the sharpness was set at the lowest. There's low, medium, high. I had it on the lowest. I now prefer the sharpness to be at the lowest because the other two, it's just quite too much digital sharpening, and I just really don't like it. Now, the white balance was actually set to native. I do prefer to do a little bit of color grading in post and set it to native, and the picture profile was set on flat. So that is extremely important. You must set the color grade to flat, otherwise it is a little bit too contrasty and too much saturation in camera. Now, I did set the camera on linear and horizon leveling. Now, leveling isn't too much important in this scenario, as the GoPro is pretty much in a locked position anyway, but you know, if it did start to creep over a little bit, it will keep the horizon nice and level, which is perfectly fine in this one. Now, the last setting was Hypersmooth. Now, this one, I wanted to have a really nice smooth shot, as I was expecting the car to be extremely bumpy because it was on a back road, and unfortunately the GoPro was a little bit too steady. Like, it was just too smooth, it just didn't look right, but I suppose I kind of liked the look in the end. If anything, I did have it on a Hypersmooth and boosted, because when you do put it in a boosted mode, it does crop in a little bit. That is a little bit of a downside, but I probably didn't actually need the boosted, so I probably could have just left it in Hypersmooth, and that would have been perfectly fine. But as you can see here, there just isn't enough bumps to make it actually look natural. And yeah, probably next time when I'll shoot, I won't have it on boosted, just regular Hypersmooth. But yeah, never really thought I would say that. It was too smooth coming out of the GoPro because I attached this directly to the car. Now, this is where beforehand I was like, how do I attach this to the car? I don't actually have any proper GoPro attachments. I've got a whole bunch of cheap accessories from, you know, unknown companies, which I don't know, I don't really trust them, especially because I'm gonna be driving pretty fast on bumpy roads. So I thought, hey, I need to buy something, and I got this bad boy. This is a clamp from Small Rig. This thing is amazing. I actually bought this. I didn't actually get given this by Small Rig, so this isn't sponsored or any sort of crap. This is me just saying this is amazing. And just a quick shout out to APS-C for saying that no one shows the GoPro Hero 9 on a top-down rig. Well, this is it. This is the top-down rig. Anyway, this thing has a vice grip on one side. It's got rubber on the inside as well, and it's got the ball head on the top with the 1/4 screw on top of it, and attaches the GoPro to the finger mount, the tripod finger mount. Now, the link will be in the description below if you do actually want to check this bad boy out. Now, this is essentially how I actually attach this to the car, and I actually put this on the side of the door handle. And the low one, I actually attached that on the number plate. And, you know, it turned out really good. I was actually quite amazed that this would actually stay nice and steady, but it did really well. It held up perfectly fine. I'm actually super confident that this will hold in almost any situation anyway. But now the last shot I used of the GoPro was actually driving over the GoPro. Now, this was actually funny at first. I was pretty confident that the GoPro would fit. I mean, look. That's not really high, right? I'm pretty confident that this was gonna fit under the car, place it on the ground, we'd be perfectly fine, right? So we just decided to do a nice little slow test run, and Rodney would drive over it with his car, and boom, he hit it. There's some marks on the GoPro. He did hit it, something was low, I don't know, it must have been the exhaust or something, knocked the GoPro over. That's okay, I took the tripod mount off, and then it was a success. It was pretty good. The footage was really good. I did have to add some camera shake in post because, you know, I just wanted to add a little bit more effect of the car speeding over really fast, just really immerse the audience into that shot. And it was pretty easy. I did this simply by keyframing a few frames and move the frame up and down a little bit to give it a nice little vibration sort of look in. It was that easy. Now, when it comes to color grading, I just had to make sure I desaturated the footage just a little bit because that's the kind of look I went for. I went for sort of like a dystopian sort of warm tone to it. I feel that that went like quite well with the type of car it was and the type of scenery that we were actually in as well. Now, the GoPro did still seem a little bit too saturated in the end compared to S-Log3 because that's expected. S-Log3 is super flat. And just the overall tone, you know, I did have to desaturate it in the end, but that's perfectly fine. It's pretty easy to do anyway. Now, one other thing that can be handy is to link the GoPro up to your smartphone. Like when you're in the car, this can help with changing some settings, or you can see your composition while you're actually driving. Well, you're not driving, you're in the passenger seat. Definitely don't operate your phone when you're driving. I was in the passenger seat, Rodney was driving, and I was just having a look at the composition. It was perfectly fine. I was fine with it anyway. But yeah, I was really happy with the performance of the GoPro and matching it with the A7S III. But anyway, guys, I hope this helped you guys. If it did, please hit that like button. Consider subscribing to my YouTube channel for more GoPro Hero 9 content and A7S III content, and more filmmaking content in general. I'm going to be doing a whole bunch more tutorials in the future as well. If you do have any sort of suggestions, please comment below. I'd really like to know. Other than that, guys, my name's Jason Morris, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, let's get it.